any of you guys that are on social media, you will have seen a video, and it really, really is pretty disturbing, right? And it stopped me in my tracks. I want to issue a warning to you because I am about to play this video, but I have obviously blurred out the faces of the people involved. Let me just play it for you and then we'll discuss.
Quay biên trai lad! Quay biên trai lad! Quay biên trai lad! Quay biên trai lad! Quay biên trai lad!
This video, right, it is, take my word for it, it's pretty horrific. It took place near Manchester and it's gone viral and it sparked, obviously, a huge outrage. Now, the police then took to Twitter off the back of this outrage and confirmed that they have arrested a 12-year-old girl, obviously for assault and the rest of it. Now, I'm not going to discuss the specifics of this girl because it's an ongoing case, but a conversation's been sparked, Paul, about whether or not in this country the age of criminality is at the right level or not, whether or not children, for doing acts that obviously are criminal, should be tried in that way as criminals as opposed to damaged individuals, whether or not they should have criminal records and all the rest of it. Where do you stand on it?
Well, look, I'm no bleeding heart liberal, but I think, I have to say, I think the age of 10 is probably too low.
So 10 is England and Wales.
10 is England
12,
and Wales, 12 is Scotland.
Scotland.
I think arguably 12 is too low as well, actually. I think if you look at many countries in Europe, they have an age higher than that, 13, 14, sometimes even higher than that. And I just think it is difficult to be sure that kids, certainly kids at 10, know the difference or have been taught the difference between right from wrong in any serious, meaningful way.
Really?
Well, I think particularly if you think of kids from disadvantaged backgrounds where there may have been a complete absence of love, of care, and they may not have been imbued with that moral compass that many other people are imbued with. So, as I say, I'm not a pleading heart liberal on this because I think certainly the parents need to be held accountable. I think if your kid is going out and committing acts like the horrendous one that we've just seen, I certainly don't believe that the parents should escape some degree of responsibility for that. I'm all in favour of throwing the book at the parents because I think the parents can have a big impact in a young person's life in teaching them right from wrong. But the kid themselves, I would have real problems with saying they must be held criminally accountable at that age.
What age then would you be happy with?
I mean, I would need to look at the evidence. I would need to listen to the arguments for particular ages. So, I'm not going to pluck one out of the air. But
without
nonetheless,
seeing all that stuff now, you've concluded that the age of 10 is too young.
No, I'm talking from my experience. I think that the age of 10 is too young, and I'm open-minded about what the age should be.
But whilst we're all talking,
but it should be higher.
Whilst we're all talking about 10-year-old criminals, let me just take a nanosecond to remind you of this pair of disgusting, despicable 10-year-old individuals as they were, and I'm sure that some of you will know who I am talking about. And yeah, of course, little James Bulger there alongside one of the people that went on to kill him. And I mean, when I think about, you know, Paul's saying about 10-year-olds and all the rest of it, those boys will never leave my brain. Look at them. And some people go, oh, Michelle, you know, pack it in, they're children. No, they're not. They're absolute... Well, anyway,
the thing is, I mean, that is horrific, Michelle, and no one can ever forget that. And I'm sort of like, you know, I've spoken to our Denise Bulger, Jamie's mum, on several occasions, and this lives with her on a daily basis. It was horrific what Robert Thompson and John Venables did. And John Venables is still serving time because he keeps repeat offending sexual offences. So there is criminality from the age of 10 within that person. So I do disagree with Paul. I think the age of 10 is right. There are many countries in Europe that have the age of 10. Scandinavia is a different one where they have the criminal age of 15, but then they will try and sort of like take the decriminalising thing out of a criminal of 15 and give them social care instead. But there are many countries around the world where the criminal age of consent is 7. Now, I disagree with it being that low. And there is one country where the criminal age of consent is actually 0, and that is Mauritius.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. The burden of proof, though, is you have to prove that that child, no matter how old that child is, knew what they were doing, and that is the problem. But they don't actually actually have a legal age of criminal consent. It can be from birth. Obviously, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
Babies can't commit
toddlers
crime.
not, yeah.
But I mean, it does vary around the world. I mean, sort of most countries between 7 and 10 seems to be pretty much agreed. And Scotland was only put up to 12 a couple of years ago, by the way. So,
see, I think 12's too old. I think Scotland should be brought into line with those guys. For example, in England, it should be 10. We should be united.
OK, so let me ask you this: do you believe in the proposal for votes at 16?
Oh, here we go.
No, it's a legitimate question because I don't. I've made this argument. I've made this argument frequently that I think that you cannot say that children of that age, some of whom will still be at school, have got the wherewithal to be able to go into a ballot box and choose the government of the day. I've made that argument consistently.
So I would say no, I don't agree with votes for 16-year-olds because lots of them, I think, age of 18, you've got a stake in society, you've hopefully been paying tax for a little bit, you've probably been working and all the rest of it, so then I would bring you in then.
But
to me, that's quite different.
Would you say that 16-year-olds, and some people have called for votes for 14-year-olds as well, would you say that 16-year-olds are, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but not mature enough to be able to exercise a decision of that weight in terms of choosing a government or a local council or something?
No, I don't think it's about maturity. I think it's about having a stake in society. Most 16-year-olds won't be working. When you want to raise the age...
Many will.
When you look at those two kids that I've just demonstrated to you on that screen, I mean, I can't even begin... I mean, I just feel ill even thinking about what those two monsters did to James Bulger. Are you telling me that you think that they shouldn't have been criminally prosecuted at the age of 10?
Look, it was an absolutely horrendous crime, and those of us who are parents will recognise that, and you're right to feel the way that you do. But I do think we need to draw a distinction between horrific crimes that are committed by very, very young children who, in some cases, as I think in at least one of these cases that we're referring to with Jamie Bulger, had the most awful background and the most disadvantaged background.
Do you know, that is such an insult to people that have had a bad background and are actually decent people.
It's not. It's a question of whether or not kids at that age, at that young age, have had it instilled in them.
So what would you have done with those two kids?
What's the difference between right and wrong?
What would you have done with those two kids?
Well, I certainly children who commit those sorts of acts need to be incarcerated because other children and wider society need to be protected from those people. I'm not disputing that for a second. But at such a young age, 10, 11, 12, if there is the chance of rehabilitation, then I think that's something that we need to try to offer them. And I want to stress again that when it comes to adults committing those sorts of crimes, I would have no problem whatsoever if capital punishment was brought back.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about adults, I'm talking about kids.
I'm trying to, in terms of context, I'm trying to explain that this is not me coming from the point of view of a bleeding heart liberal. But I do think we need to draw a distinction between 10-year-olds committing awful crimes and who have had particular disadvantaged backgrounds and adults doing it gratuitously when they're 20, 30, 40.
You know what? I watched that video of those little girls in Manchester and I thought the way she was on the floor, she was kicking her in the head. And you watch that and you think, where are the parents? What sort of parenting is going on in those homes? And it's so that, to a certain extent, I'm agreeing with you, Paul. And there are questions to be asked about what sort of homes children are growing up in. But, I mean, surely the parents have to be taken to task. I mean, what are they teaching these kids that behaviour is acceptable?
Well, I'm quite harsh, I do confess, because not only would I have arrested the 12-year-old, and I need to be careful because it's an ongoing case.
Yes,
so let's just imagine this fictitious situation. So I would have arrested the perpetrator, but I would have also looked to arrest the people around that were goading, encouraging and filming that behaviour. Because, when there's a murder and stuff, there's the whole concept of about joint enterprise where people are collective, they're in a collective, and you have collective responsibility to a degree. Social media, what social media has done to children of today's society, you can be bullied 24/7. Before, you used to be bullied at school, maybe on the way home and all the rest of it, and then you kind of had a little bit of respite when you went to bed. These days, it is relentless.
It is, and I think children are certainly desensitised as well because of what they see on social media and some of the computer games they play as well. But the problem with what you've suggested, Michelle, I think there might have been people there, kids there as well, in this mythical case we're talking about, who also felt scared for their own safety. So maybe they, what it's like in a gang mentality. I just think prosecuting people for being in the background, I think is a bit of a slippery slope.
No, they stood in the background, cheering, jeering, filming, uploading it. They're not stood there, oh, I'm so frightened, don't hit me. They're part of it.
It's the nature of our age. But I think Dawn has got an important point about, the parents having to take responsibility. And I don't think we're very good at that. If you're an employer and one of your employees bullies someone in the workplace, you're responsible as an employer. I think the same principle
Well, there you go, prosecute the parents as well, then.
Exactly,
parents of bullies. There you go, we end on a note of agreement. What do you make to it all in terms of the age of criminality? Is it about right? Does it need to change? Does Scotland need to be brought into line with England?